Hello and welcome to the Simplifiers podcast. I am so thrilled to present this very smart lady with you guys today. I'd like to introduce to you Margaret Schlachter. She is one of the most foremost experts in the sport of obstacle racing today. Sport has always been a driving factor in Schlachter's life, growing up in the world of alpine skiing and as an elite racer from a young age. Then in college, as a two-sport varsity athlete at Babson College in both alpine skiing and women's lacrosse, she earned her Bachelor's of Science in Business Management with a dual concentration in Strategic Management and Entrepreneurship, which later she earned her Master's in Education Leadership from the University of Vermont. Now, in 2010, she was first introduced to obstacle course racing through social media. That's where she started to create something called Dirt in Your Skirt to track her own race endeavors, and quickly this grew from a personal blog to an industry website. What started out as a hobby soon became more serious when in 2012 she decided to quit her job in education to pursue a career as a professional obstacle racer, one of the first in the industry. She has been with obstacle course racing from its birth in 2010 and is the dominant female voice in the sport currently. She works as editor-in-chief for Mud Run Guide, the largest obstacle racing website in the world. She's also the media director for Venturi, the company that produces the Obstacles Course Racing World Championships, North American OCR Championships, 24-hour Enduro Championships, and the Empire State Marathon. Additionally, she works with Fuego y Agua Endurance, which produces Survival Run, one of the toughest endurance challenges in the world. I'd like to welcome onto the Simplifiers podcast, Margaret Schlachter. Hello.
Thanks so much for having me, Mary, and thanks for the nice introduction.
My goodness. When I hear your bio, I go, wow, holy smokes, all the things that you have accomplished all the way up to this point. So, Margaret, what I want to talk to you today about is how does endurance racing, obstacle course racing, mud runs, all of that, how has that helped you become a better entrepreneur?
Yeah, definitely. I use the same, there's like a similar story that I've heard over and over again in the obstacle racing space. For me, it's, it's so easy to live a really comfortable life these days, right? Mm-hmm. Like we are both sitting in climate controlled spaces right now. And if we don't have to, sometimes we can just put on our shoes inside, walk to our car, park our car in the driveway, maybe we go to the gym, but we're inside at the gym, mm-hmm. and then go to work, go home, and we realize that it's been like days and we haven't even touched the ground unless mm-hmm. you have unless you're kind of like myself who works from home and never wears shoes and, has like a garden in our backyard and we have chickens and stuff. But a lot of people, like if you're living in a really urban environment, you might not touch the earth at all.
Why is that important to you in your mind?
Yeah, so I think that like we have a connection to it, obviously. Like we're all part of this thing called Earth, mm-hmm. And when we're not in connection with it, we're missing that aspect of our life. And there's so many studies, I could link a ton of studies afterwards that talk about why it's important to get out in nature, why it's important to do all these things. But the thing is we've gotten to a point where we can stay comfortable all day long. Mm-hmm. It can stay 70 degrees every single day, mm-hmm. and it can be, depending on where you are in the world, in Fahrenheit, Celsius would be different. That would be too warm.
Yeah.
But, and it's sunlight all day long, right? Yeah. Because I'm sitting in a lit room right now. We don't have to use candles anymore.
Right.
So with that in mind, it's like we've dulled the edges of our life. Right? Mm-hmm. Because we sort of get to the point where we're not really, everything just sort of dulls. And what obstacle racing does is it yanks you out of that like comfortable kind of rounded world where everything sort of can be planned and perfect. And they're like, no, we're going to throw you into the elements. We're going to have you crawling under barbed wire sometimes. Guess what? You might get cut. Mm-hmm. We're going to have you jump over fire. Remember your parents said, don't play with fire? Okay, we're going to tell you to jump over it. And so the first part is it gets you out in the element. It actually gets you dirty. Like you physically get,
you're a mess.
Your skirt. Yes. Yeah. But you get dirty. So that's number one. And number two is it's so funny because you get to say like an 8-foot wall. And an 8-foot wall, it's not impossible to get over. You might need help getting over it. But what I found is a lot of people that do the races is that when you do these races and all of a sudden you overcome one of these obstacles, right? We're always as entrepreneurs overcoming obstacles. Well, here you're overcoming a physical obstacle. Literally, it's sitting in front of you. You have to get over it, under it, whatever you have to do. And just all of a sudden it's funny because the fire jump's my favorite kind of obstacle. Even though it's the easiest one, it's the one that mentally can really trip people up because you're told don't play with fire. Like that's like every kid is at the campfire with their parents and their parents are like, don't play with fire, don't touch the fire.
So paint a picture for us. What is the fire jump if people are listening and trying to imagine what this looks like?
For sure. So it's basically like a bed of coals. Sometimes it's a rage. There's actually flames coming up, and sometimes it's more like you're jumping over coals. You can walk over it. Honestly, it's really not like a huge leap. It's not like, Tony Robbins walking on coals. It is, you could step over it almost.
Wait, pause. Are we wearing shoes while we're doing this, or are we bare feet?
Yeah, for sure. Wearing shoes, although I have seen some people run these races barefoot, but that's like less than a dozen in 9 years.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, so you get to this spot, and I've seen so many people just get there and freeze, and then they back up, and then they freeze, and they back up, and then they freeze. And how many times when you have your own company or you're trying to start a company or you have an idea for a company, you get to the close and you're ready to pull the trigger and then you stop and you step back and then you stop and step back. And so by the time somebody does actually jump over that fire or step over, however, skip over it, whatever they do, it changes something in your brain. I think it starts to change some neurons. It starts to change some neural pathways and saying like, hey, maybe I can do this. I've heard so many stories of people. I mean, I ended up quitting my job and changing my careers completely because of this sport. And that I'm not the only one that has decided that rounded kind of ball lifestyle we were talking about before. They realize like, hey, that's not really where I want to be. Like, I want a little bit more in life, and this kind of ignites that again. And for entrepreneurs, like maybe it just lets them, you're like, hey, I got over that 8-10 foot wall. Maybe I can submit my business plan to that venture capitalist that I wanted to, because worst case scenario, right? People just say no.
Yeah.
Like that's like, it's not as scary when all of a sudden most of the things we're scared about in business are because we're just scared for whatever reason. But then when you get out in the elements and there's actually a controlled component of danger, I won't say like, I don't think obstacle racing is dangerous, but I think that there's a little X factor to it. Right.
Yeah. And
when you kind of keep putting yourself in those situations that sort of push your boundaries in a way that's safe, but it doesn't feel necessarily super, it pushes you. Then you just get back to work and you're like, why am I like so scared to send an email?
Right. Or reach out to a publication that you want to get featured in. I mean, like there are things that stop a company dead track in their tracks because they've never done it before as well. So I guess what you're saying here is that, if you were to take part in obstacle races, mud runs, all of that stuff, then, you're helping to train your brain. I mean, really, that's what we're talking about is mindset shift and realizing that the scary things, if you can do it on a mud run, you can do it in your business.
Yeah, exactly. And I think another thing, and I think this goes for racing in general. So I don't think I've also run some ultra marathons and whatnot as well. And when you think of an ultra, or you think of an obstacle race, you might be like, whoa, I have to go 5 miles and there's 30 obstacles I have to go over. And that just seems daunting. Or if you're running an ultra, you're like, I'm going to go run over 30 miles right now. And, when you think about it as this whole giant piece, yeah, it's daunting. But like in business, you don't come up with a company from like, you don't just sit here, like we're sitting here right now. We're like, we might have an idea for a company, but the company isn't like, okay, go at the end of our hour-long conversation.
Right.
Like it's pieces, and that's kind of what these races help you do as well. It helps you work on that mindset of, okay, I got over this obstacle, I have some running now, and then I'm going to have this obstacle, and then I'm going to have some running now, and then I'm going to have this obstacle. And that's what life is, right? Really, in business, there's always going to be obstacles, and it's just being able to take it as it comes at you instead of being like, oh my gosh, I have to do all of these things. It's kind of it's like making your list at the beginning of the morning and just starting to check things off, and like start with and the races kind of do this too. They kind of start with some of the easier obstacles to sort of ease you in. And that's kind of how I like to run my work day too, is I get the easy stuff done. I'm like, oh, I can check my email. That's like easy. I can, do a post on social media. That's easy. And then start to work down. So then you're like, kind of get your brain going. In a race, you get your muscles going, and then you get to the point where you're like, okay, well, now I can really tackle that hard obstacle, whether it's work day or race day.
So let's back up a little bit and tell me more about your story. So who were you like as a teenager? Were you into sport and exercise then, or did this come later down the line?
Yeah, so I started skiing when I was 2. Like, I always say that my parents put me on skis and pushed me down a hill, and it's been all downhill since then. Like, make a silly joke out of it. But in reality, we grew up skiing. I grew up skiing, and that was, I played tennis, I did gymnastics, I did ballet. So we're pretty active family, and I had a lot of opportunities to try different sports and all that sort of stuff. Skiing stuck with me, and I actually went to a high school for alpine ski racers.
Oh, wow.
So it was really similar to living, like, basically my high school experience was like living as a Division I college athlete. Like, got up in the morning, trained, breakfast, school, trained, study hall, sleep, rinse, repeat. And then in the winter during our racing season, we would get up, warm up, breakfast, go out on the mountain and train for a couple hours, then go to school in the afternoon. So our whole school schedule was based around our sport. And it wasn't, as we're recording this, the Olympics are just about to start. I think this year, I just got an email, I think we have 9 or 12 alumni in the Olympics.
Wow.
So to give you an idea, and my school I went to was only 120 people, 7th through 12th grade.
Incredible.
So when you start so it's high stakes, high pressure, high achieving, and everybody wants to be there for their sport. So I think that kind of set me up. I ended up going to business school, and I feel like it just kind of set me up to stay on that. Like, I've always been really the type A personality. So doing these races and doing all this stuff has kind of made me mellow out a lot of it, and like realize, like, hey, I can't control everything.
Right. So talk to me about, if sport's been a huge thread in your life from when you're a wee little bitty, I imagine, having a champion's mindset has been woven into your DNA from very young as well. And also, I imagine discipline is a huge part of what you do. So talk to me about maybe morning routines or things that you do currently that really help sharpen that mindset for you.
Yeah, sure. This is actually something I just started, so I'm not very far into it. But I just started a gratitude journal, which I feel like I hear so many people say, start a gratitude journal. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. And for years, I just sort of said, okay, whatever. I'm busy. I like to get up. I like to check my email. I like to do all these things. So I'm taking more time to slow down a little bit.
Are you doing that first thing in the morning?
Yeah, first thing in the morning. That's like what I do. It's the last thing. It's the first thing I do when I get up, and the last thing I do before I go to bed. And I have the 5-minute, not to plug a certain one, but I have the 5-minute journal one, which is just super easy to use. I kind of looked at a lot of different ones before I stumbled on that one, but it's just easy. It lays it out for you. You literally it does take less than 5 minutes a day. But within the first day of doing it, I had even I wanted to finalize booking a podcast guest. And that was like one of my intentions for the day. Well, we'd kind of been going back and forth with her assistant, and I was just like, oh, when am I haven't heard back from her in a couple days. I don't know when this is gonna happen. Well, she emailed that day. We booked it. We recorded it. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe there's something to this.
Yes.
So definitely doing that. And then my husband and I, we have two dogs and they sleep in the bed with us. And we pretty much have a morning routine of like 15 to 20 minutes of just hanging out with our dogs and just like us kind of spending time together, but spending time with the dogs as well and just sort of cuddling with them. And we have a cat too, but he's old and cranky. So
Cats don't seem to cuddle as well as dogs. Yeah.
No, I mean, he's over 15 years old now, so he's kind of getting up there. But our dogs we have two border collies and they love to cuddle. So I mean, that's part of my routine. And it's like, it's a weird like morning ritual, I guess, but that's like a huge thing when I'm traveling for work and stuff. I'm like, oh, I miss like my dog time and I miss our dog time in the morning. And it's just a time for us to kind of connect together with the dogs and do that. And then we do the whole coffee thing. Like I've got coffee right here. We don't have like a Mr. Coffee or something like that in the house. We grind the beans. We have a pour over. We take the time. It's about a 15 minute routine from start to finish. And that's also, I mean, I have a review that it's coming out as we're recording this, but it will have already been out, where I kind of talk about it as a moving meditation. So just it's like I try to create some, I don't know how well I do it every day, but I try to create some mindfulness at the beginning of my day.
Yeah.
And then sort of sets the day.
Yeah, it sets the tone for everything. I mean, I'm smiling like a goon over here because it's very similar to my morning routine as well. My young son is still young enough that he comes in for the cuddles. He's not cool yet. Like, oh, I'm too cool for this. Like, thank God he's still into morning cuddles. And the mornings that he does come in and give us a cuddle, even if it's literally 5 minutes, it sets the tone for the rest of the day. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm alive now. And like, and like, it's those days where you get woken up by a crazy alarm or, something. I actually find that I don't check my email first in the morning, because if I find an email that, is an emergency or an alert, I mean, again, it sets the tone immediately. So yeah, I think that morning routines are so incredibly important for a champion's mindset.
Yeah, I would love to say like I sit and I do yoga and I go out. The other thing is I like to sleep in. So I actually get up a lot later, I think, than, and I know I used to when I was training and being an athlete full time and I was working full time, I was waking up at like 4 a.m. and working out at 4:30 in the morning. And there's something beautiful about being on top of a mountain when the sun rises.
Yes.
But there's also something beautiful about being in your bed when the sun rises and just not having an alarm and waking up to your natural rhythm.
Yeah.
And I guess so that's something that we do as well. So the winter tend to get up a little later. The summer I get up earlier. So I, pretty in sync with the sun and the sunrise and
what your body needs as well. I mean, how important is sleep in your life right now?
It's one of my favorite things. I mean, honestly, I'd say sleep and good quality food. I mean, those are probably the two most important things. And I think if you're not working on those two things, everything else, like, you have to start from yourself and within. And if you're not taking care of yourself, how can you possibly like run a company? If you don't take the time to have a meal or have all these different pieces, you can't succeed. And I mean, you can try to, and some people do, but eventually you're going to crash. And that's kind of what happened with me when I was working in education. I was crashing all the time and I didn't realize how out of balance I was till after I left that industry. And ops racing kind of was like the 2x4 in the back of the head that was like, you cannot continue to live like this. You need to make some changes. So
talk to us about our very first race you competed in. I mean, granted, you have, athlete background, so you are probably fairly healthy, but, there's probably hundreds of women who are listening to this episode right now going, that sounds all well and good. She was an alpine skier at 2. I'm barely getting off the couch and, nervous about my first 5K. So talk to us about what it was like at that very first race.
Yeah, for sure. So after college, I was coaching alpine skiing, coaching lacrosse, and I was working at a school similar to the school that I went to. Now, coaching is the key, not being an athlete is the other key to it. But so I actually went to the very first Spartan race they ever had
Oh,
and
wow.
found it, like I said, like you said in the intro, through social media. It was on a whim, and decided, oh, that looks like something different. And I had just gone through like a massive life change. The first school I worked for, they had, because of the economics of like 2008, boarding schools were hit the next year.
Mm-hmm.
My job no longer could be funded. So I was told that I had, in a 5-minute conversation, I had 30 days to move out of where I'd lived for 3 years because I lived at the school, and I no longer had a job in 30 days. Like,
No
you don't have a
pressure.
home job in a month. And I'd gone to that school. So
Yeah.
that was like gut punch, gut punch, gut punch. So then when I got to the new school that I was working at, I was like, I just need to make some changes. Like, and I did write a book, and if you want to, you can read more into the story. It's in the introduction of like more of the catalysts that made all this happen. But
Yeah,
had a few.
we'll put the link down in the show notes on your book for sure.
Perfect. Yeah, and so I had a few things happen that could have gotten really bad, but luckily they weren't, and went to the new school and was just like, I need to make some changes. And then I had become a volunteer EMT, so I was on the fire department, and somebody had liked this thing called Spartan Race, and I said, "Oh, I'll give that a try." It's supposed to be 2 miles, and it's got some obstacles, and I hate running, so I was a lacrosse goalie in college, so I didn't have to run. Like I played, and like I was like, I want to play the one position you don't really have to run. Although my coach still made me run, but I was one of the slowest on the team. But yeah, so I mean. So that's where it was, and it was totally different. Now it's on international television. We're talking about world championships now. There's a push towards the Olympics, all these pieces. Back then it was at an outdoor center,
Mm-hmm.
just less than 500 people running through the woods, and the obstacles looked like they're so janky, I guess is a word to say, almost compared to what you'd see today, especially for Spartan Race, because they're now a global brand in over like 20 or 30 countries. So if you looked at, I mean, one of the obstacles was a tarp you crawled under. Like that was the obstacle. So, and I mean, it was the Wild West, which is really neat because having kind of an entrepreneurship, going to school for that, how often do you get to be, especially in sport, at something from the very beginning? Like you can say, I mean, no, obstacle racing is not new. It's been going on for hundreds of years in different aspects. The military's had it. There's been races in different parts of the world, but it never really became a phenomenon the way it is today globally until it started around 2010, at least here in the States. And but to be kind of at the ground level and to say like, oh, I was at the very first time they did this. I was at the very first time they did this. It was, so it's been really, I don't know. I don't think many people in a lifetime get an experience like that. And then, I've kind of, I was a professional athlete for a little while. I got injured. The sport continued. As any new sport, it progresses very quickly.
So if somebody's listening right now and they're going, well, okay, she's talking about mindset. She's telling me how make me a better entrepreneur and a better leader. So I want to give it a go. There's a race happening in my local city. What should she wear? What should she bring? Could she prepare? What does she wear first? Let's talk that.
Sure. The number one rule, and I've probably written this same article about 10 times now, is do not wear cotton.
Okay.
So cotton is a great fabric. It's cheap to buy and it's disposable, However, when you get cotton wet, it loses its shape. It gets saggy. And my first race, I wore cotton, like capris, like yoga type pants, and spent it ended up being 4 miles, not 2 miles when we got there, but that's a whole other story. But I spent the whole time pulling my pants up. And so.
And I'll imagine you're also cold as well, right? Because it
can be, yeah. I mean, it just depends on the race. And now there are some races that don't have mud. So like the Spartan Race Stadium races do not have mud. Epic Series in California does not have mud. So there are a few out there that don't have mud in them. So if like mud is like you're like like not like want to try this but don't want to get muddy. There are options out there.
Okay.
Then I guess you could wear cotton, but if you're going to do a typical one, just don't wear cotton.
Okay.
Wear some sort of like compression-y type shorts, or I mean you could wear regular shorts, but just wear something that, think about like if you were to jump in a swimming pool in that outfit, and then get out, how is it going to feel on your body?
Yeah.
You know, that's like a baseline. And then as well, do not wear Gore-Tex shoes. Gore-Tex is really awesome to keep water out. However, when you fully submerge the shoe, it doesn't let water out.
Interesting. So it just becomes...
It doesn't breathe. So it just becomes a really, really heavy pair of shoes.
Yeah.
So you definitely want kind of like a trail shoe, something with a little traction. A lot of people just want to wear their oldest pair of beat up shoes. You can do that. Now, the greatest thing is you can do whatever you want. There is no set uniform. There are a few things that are going to make your day a lot better, right, I would say, and happier.
Right.
But you know, if you have a trail shoe that breathes is the biggest thing. And if you want to test it out beforehand, if you've got like, hey, I've got the shoe I go on trails with, or I go outside with, think about like, if it's really muddy, are you going to slip and slide in them? Like, do they have some traction underneath them? And then two, if you really want to test it, dunk your shoe in water, like fill a 5-gallon bucket, or if you don't have that, fill your sink with water, dip your shoe in it, pull it out. Does it just hold the water, or does water come out? And that, you know, and that's going to give you an idea, because your feet are going to be wet.
And
same.
So talk to me, wool socks. Okay. And Gore-Tex shoes. Don't wear cotton.
No Gore-Tex.
Yeah, no Gore-Tex shoes, no cotton, for sure. Yeah. So talk to me about, what should I bring to eat? Should I have the snacks and high energy cubes and all that nonsense, or no?
It depends. So I am very much with nutrition. It depends on the distance that you're doing. Like, I think a great intro to obstacle racing, if there is a Warrior Dash near you. They are 5K events. The obstacles are they're not the hardest obstacles in the world. So some people that have been in the industry for a while, they're like, oh, whatever. But it's a great taste. And I wouldn't do a race that's longer than if you can find a 5K distance-ish, something kind of around that distance, because, and this even goes for even if you're a seasoned athlete, because, comes from experience with an ultra runner that we were running a race together, and it was her first race, but it was a half marathon distance race, which is not, the distance wasn't the problem, but I'm just like, oh, how are you enjoying the race as we're running through the race? And she's like, this is fun, but this is really hard.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and afterwards I was like, well, are you going to do another one? She's like, I don't know if I'm going to do another one again. And I'm like, well, maybe if you had just done like a 5K one, because even if you like walk a 5K, as long as it's kind of if it's a flat-ish 5K, you can get it done in an hour. I mean, we're talking a 20-minute mile there. Right. So most people can at least walk a 20-minute mile.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be like an hour of your time out there suffering if you really hate it.
Yeah.
Now, you know what I mean? And I hate to sound like hate it as in the bad side, but all I'm saying, like, don't, just because you're like, oh, well, I run marathons, so I'm going to sign up for the longest one. Right. Well, you might not like it, and then you've signed up for like 3 or 4 hours of just not having so much fun. Like Tough Mudder has a Tough Mudder half. That's a great option to try. It's about 5 miles, so it's a little bit longer, but still, it's, you know, that shorter period. Spartan Race has a sprint. Now, Spartan Race, if you fail an obstacle, you have a penalty of 30 burpees. Warrior Dash and Tough Mudder do not have that. So that's why I kind of say, like, those ones are good ones to test yourself in first, because if you get to something and you go like, that's just outside of what my ability level is, you can go around it. Right. And there's no penalty or shame or anything like that.
What should I eat the night before? What should I eat the day of? What are your recommendations there?
Yeah, so I would just say make sure you have a solid meal before the night before, whatever that might be, whether you are like, I don't think you need to do like a carb up or anything like that. Personally, we eat more of towards like a fat burning in my family. So we don't really eat a lot of grains and gluten. I mean, sometimes we do as like a treat, but it's not the basis of our diet. So that's why I'm always very careful with diet stuff. And in the morning, I say, eat whatever you can put in your body. Because some people have race morning and they're like, I have a cup of coffee and that's all I can have.
Right.
Other people are like, give me the full like lumberjack breakfast.
Right.
So that's what I'd say. And
so
again,
it varies for people then.
It varies for people. And if you are going to bring a gel or a goo or whatever, a nut butter, whatever you want to bring on the course of you, go for a walk or a run and try it and see how it affects your gastrointestinal system, basically. Because the worst thing that can happen is you try something new on race day and it does not
agree with you
with your body. And so that's why with like nutrition, it's so personalized. And like I said, if you're doing just like a 5K, if you're doing like a 5K distance, you're probably not going to be on the course more than an hour. Hour and a half max. And there is water on course as well at the minimum, and some also have some food depending on the race on like some snacks on course, but that's very race dependent. So I'd say see what the website says. And if you have questions, just email them, and any good organization will answer your question.
Got it. So somebody's sitting here going, well, this sounds interesting. Doesn't sound like it's too scary. Okay, go for the small race. No problem. I've got tick, tick, tick on all the clothes and things. But how far advance should she train? Like an ideal?
Yeah. So, it depends on where your starting point is. If you're like couch to 5K, maybe do the couch to 5K, which I believe that is like 2 months or so.
Yeah.
But then again, like I've like crash coursed it before, and the first Tough Mudder I ever did, I had all intentions to train for it, and it was a 12-mile race, and I literally trained hard for like 30 days and just was like, okay, now I'm doing this. And now I had done some 5K, I had done a bunch of like 5K 5-mile distance obstacle races. So you can jump in and do it at kind of any fitness level. Now it's going to be way more fun if you spend a little bit of time training beforehand. And honestly, the easiest thing that I think to do is, now there's tons of ways to train. Like over on Mud Run Guide, we have every Tuesday we put out an article, Training Tuesday, and it's like a link to a video with either how to do an obstacle or a workout or something like that. And then as well, we have a list of gyms all over North America and training facilities that you can go to, and you can find stuff in your area and all that sort of stuff. And you can also find races in your area over there. So if you are interested, head on over there.
We'll put the notes in the show notes.
But at the same time, the best workout, and I've always told, this is like the one that I tell people when they're at absolute zero, go out your door. If you live somewhere near like a trail or a nature path or anything like that, that makes this even better. But if you don't, go out your door, go for a jog, run, fast walk, whatever is going to kind of push you along. Try to go out for a half hour. If half hour is easy, go out for an hour. And then every 5 minutes or so, stop where you are. Don't include this in your like actual moving time. Stop where you are. Do like 10 burpees, 10 sit-ups, 10 push-ups, wherever you're at. Now, if you're like, this sounds like too much, maybe it's 5-5-5. Maybe you're just like, I'm going to stop and do jumping jacks. But the idea is you run, stop, do some body movements, and then you go back to run, jog, walk, wherever you're at. And you repeat that for that half hour tech period. Now you've pretty much simulated at least that first part about like running, getting to an obstacle, you have to do something there and then go back to running again. So you're starting to weave yourself into
the pattern.
That sort of, Otherwise, if you have kids, go to the playground with your kids and play on the playground with them. Like when they crawl underneath something, a picnic table, crawl under a picnic table with them.
Yeah.
Like try to do the monkey bars with them. It doesn't have to be really complicated. to get ready for these things. Now there's like I said, my book's got a ton of different, it's got a bunch of workouts. It's got some more advanced stuff, and everything's modified. Like you can modify it all. But at the end of the day, it's just getting out there and moving your body. So it's learning how to just manipulate your body in ways and start to feel it again. Like go, you just said you got a young son, did you say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got two kids. Uh-huh.
2 kids. So yeah. So I mean, next time if you go to the playground with them, like do what they're doing. Just watch a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, they're already doing it.
It's the truth.
Look how they're squatting. Look how they're in the sandbox squatting down, playing. They're not bending over. Try to play with them. Mimic your kids. And that, just to get you through your first race. Now, like I said, if you want to really get into it and really train for it, you want to make it your sport, there's a lot more that you can do. But if you just want to go and have fun, those are like the baseline easiest things you can kind of do to get yourself
and
to kind of get yourself going.
Would you agree that because this, for a lot of people, they're sitting there going, yeah, right. Like it's a bit scary for them to jump over and actually put their name down and sign up for a race.
Yeah.
Would you agree that doing it with either your partner or your best friends, or just getting other people involved in that, and so that you have that accountability built in, also helps propel you when fear is, the big brick wall and you need to push through it? Telling somebody else and getting somebody else into it helps you break through.
Yeah, definitely. I think that if you have an accountability buddy, a friend that you can do this with, that's awesome. If you have a company and you want to do, now it's kind of fun to say, it's kind of funny to say like forced fun, forced team building. I mean, but you could turn it into like a team building activity.
Yeah.
And if you've got a small company, you could run or a department together.
Raise money for a charity or something like that by being part of it.
Exactly. And, I don't like to force anybody into the industry, but it is fun. And it's just a way to feel like, going back to what I was just talking about, like playing on the playground with your kid, it's an adult way to feel that same feeling. And you're given permission to kind of just play, and you're given permission to, and sometimes you need a little help. Sometimes you need help from a friend. Don't we all sometimes need help in life? So there's so many parallels that when you start to break it down, that yes, it's just on one level, it's just running in the mud. It's just running on a trail with man-made obstacles, some natural obstacles. Like it's just playing in the mud. But on the other hand, it does reconnect us to that feeling we had as a kid when we would go outside and make, I don't know about you, but like make mud pie, like take the mud and make mud pies and be like, hey, look, I baked a mud pie for you. Like those sorts of things. And we sometimes lose that when we get older. We lose that sense of play. And this kind of brings that back.
Yeah.
And in most races, you get a free beer at the end. So if you drink alcohol, you can think of it like, you get a beer at the end, you get a medal. There's normally photo opportunities. Like Warrior Dash gives you a fuzzy Viking type looking hat with the horns coming out of it.
And I imagine, I've competed in 5Ks and 10Ks and triathlons and all of that myself. I've never done a mud run personally. My husband and my kids actually have, but I've not personally done one. But I know that from triathlon training that I've done in the past, there's such a community vibe to it. Like when you're there race day, the jitters and the excitement before the race starts, but then there's just such a, I don't know, you just feel so connected to. Granted, they're all strangers, but you feel so connected to these people after you've hit the finish line. Would you say that you see that as you're running as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Actually, there is, we can link this in the show notes as well if you want. I did a piece with lava soap a couple of years ago, and we had put in some footage from an old online series that I had where I was at a race and I'm like, only at an obstacle race can you touch a complete stranger's ass and it's totally okay. Like I'm helping this person get out of this mud pit and literally like pushing them, their ass or butt, like, and I don't know this person. And that's, I mean, you create these, even if it's just for a moment, you do create this sort of weird, quirky community with people, because there are times when you need help. And if you don't, maybe your friend can't even help, they're not strong enough there's always somebody there to help you.
Yes. And they always
and
magically appear when you least expect it too. And I think that that's,
definitely.
again, there's life lessons and parallels in your own business with that as well.
Definitely. And I guess there's one, not to, I mean, there's so many different ways. Like if you're like, wait, I have no one that would want to do anything like this with me. So I know that there's you're in Canada, right? As we're chatting.
No, I'm in the
right?
UK.
You're in the UK, right? So you have, what is it? Team Awesome Project or Team Awesome, something like that. Danny, I can't remember what his last name is. He runs, and it's like you go to I know it's around London for sure. I don't know how far it goes out into the rest of the UK, but there are different like it's outdoor workouts basically, and I believe they're free. And Project Awesome, I'm pretty sure, is what it's called. And then if you're in the in North America, there's the November Project as well, and that's an outdoor, it's free. I believe both of these are free. So, and they're communities of people working out together. So if you're kind of like, you're like, well, all this sounds great, but I need somebody to help me. There's those are just two options. There are so many. I mean, there's different training gyms popping up. You could join a CrossFit gym. It just depends. It's like the sky's the limit at a certain point. Like you can spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars or nothing.
Yeah. I imagine you could also probably search on meetup.com and find, if there's a local race happening, I'm sure there's probably resources there for loads of people. So tell me, what kind of books are you reading these days? What's catching your eye or inspiring you or challenging you right now? What's one book?
Well, I have bees, actually. We all our bees died. We're getting new bees this spring, but I just picked up a book called The Shamanic Beekeeping, like actual honeybees.
Actual bees. All right. I was like, bees, a book?
Yeah, no. So we have a book called The Shamanic Way of the Bee, and I've been really interested in the idea of the feminine and the masculine and the sacred feminine and just what all of that means. And I think a lot of women in business, maybe we could all spend more time reading books. So I've been reading a lot of books that kind of are along those themes and looking at different modalities of how to look at health and wellness as well from a spiritual point of view. I'm not a super religious person, but I'm really interested in what are all these esoteric, like, ways of doing things. Like when we connect with our moon, like how does the moon affect their body? And the crazy thing is that, and I just talked to a podcast guest about this the day before we're recording this, is like when women, like reshaping the conversation, especially for women and women in, well, I say women in business too, because that's my kind of what I like, but our power source as women is not necessarily from our brain and it's not from our heart. It's actually from our womb, which is totally radical. If you're like westernized, you've never heard this before, this might sound like crazy, but, and I thought it was crazy a few years ago. And I've really been diving into that idea of like, where does the female power source come from? And then tapping into that feminine side of ourselves. And the more people I talk to, it's amazing how many, when they tap into their feminine side, their business as well starts to evolve and grow, and in ways that they don't even, there's no tangible like I did X, so Y and Z happened. It's just, they're just like, I was sitting more in my feminine, I was in more of my intuition, and all of a sudden I got this speaking gig, or all of a sudden this happened. And then kind of looking at that, and as well moon cycles, like our female cycles and then creating space when it is that, like when it is the menstrual cycle. Sorry, this is like taking a total turn right now, but when it is the menstrual cycle, to create that space for quiet time, especially if you're an entrepreneur, if you can take that first day or two of your cycle off, like like to the extreme that one of my neighbor, who's one of my massage therapists, she specializes in Arvigo massage, which is a female. It's digestive and your reproductive. It's external, but she like does not schedule any massages with people in the 3 days of her cycle. She just takes those 3 days off and reads, sleeps, and like drinks tea
and nourishes herself and all that. And I'm sure also it's nice to have a time to reflect, during that. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And what I think is really fascinating when in the studies that I've done and read about when it comes to the masculine and the feminine, and then even the childlike spirit as well, because there's the three. Masculine is all about getting stuff done, taking action, making decisions, go, 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 go. Whereas the feminine is more about flow and ease and a push and a pull and a delicacy almost to the way you take business. Not that one is better or worse than the other. There's certainly strengths in both of those. And then the childlike spirit is all about play. Like you're talking about getting your hands in the mud, getting out there and racing, trying something new, being adventurous, all of that. And I think that there certainly are things that can be tangents and parallels to what you do in your business. Sometimes it takes that masculine spirit to get stuff done, to push through. Sometimes it takes that flow of back and forth and that's really, I see that in negotiations, in contracts, in, sales in a lot of ways. And then, your childlike spirit, it desperately needs a space to, get out there and scream and adventure. So I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so like if I were to pull over my stack of books, I think it's about 12 or 13 books deep right now. Yeah. So it's either in the process of reading or to read, and my just read stack is probably about 10 or I try to read a lot, and I ebb and flow. Winter I read a lot more than the summer. And there's like certain times of the year where I read a lot, and I think again that goes into cycles, and that's a whole other conversation. But I think that it's really important to read those books on relationship books, read those health books, not just like what to eat, but thinking about health as a holistic thing, especially if you're in the business world, because I know for years, like I've always loved food, so it's always been a passion of mine, but so I've read a ton of books on that, and I've read tons of business books, right? We read business books all the time, but why don't we read the books about like our relationships and spirituality and all those things? You're either woo-woo if you read them or you're not, but and I heard this great thing, it's actually from a sex therapist who said, why is it that if you're reading a relationship book, people assume something's wrong? If you want to learn a new skill, what do? You read books about it. Like if you want to progress your business, you read books about it. If you want to progress your relationship, we don't just come out of the womb ready to know how to do relationships. So, and out of even those books, then you can kind of translate it into business as well. Like I read a personality book, and all of a sudden that I was like, oh, that I could have used that when I was coaching people for all those, I do some coaching now, but like when I was really coaching full time, like that was the only thing I was doing. So I guess the only thing I'd say with books is like, just try to read a diversity of books.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. So tell us what we ask these same questions to all of our guests that come on. And tell us one person that you know in your circle that we should interview on the Simplifiers podcast and why.
Oh, geez. I would say that you guys should, I have a friend who is a STEMs over here in the States. So she's a middle school science and technology teacher, which is, I guess, probably not like, people are like, wow, this isn't like a groundbreaking thing, but her name's Michelle Roy, and she is, what she's doing with her kids is really interesting and unique, and she's really kind of bucking our system here. She's working within the system, but she's bucking it. Like she'll go into dumpsters and dumpster dive stuff, and then the kids will make stuff out of found objects.
Love it.
So they made like solar cookers recently, and their final project was, if they had $10,000 in a piece of land, how do you build a house with that $10,000 and what do you do? And these kids, they're middle school kids. They came up with plans. One kid has a whole plan on how to live off the grid for on less than $10,000 a year for 10 years.
Incredible. I love it. I love hearing amazing people doing so cool stuff out in the world. So yes, we'll definitely reach out to her.
Yeah.
So gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand in my book. Tell me, what are you grateful for right now?
Let's see. This morning, well, I'm grateful just to be on this podcast. I mean, I know that's it's probably such an easy, cheesy answer, but you know, I'm grateful to connect. And I love connecting with people, natural, just connector. I see people and I'm like, you should know you and you should know you. And like, so just being able to connect, I'm grateful for that. And, you know, I'm fortunate that I've got a great husband and dogs and all that. And sometimes you take those things for granted. It's, it's like I told my husband yesterday, 2 days ago, something. I was like, I am so grateful you made dinner tonight.
Yeah.
I was really busy.
It's the simple things, really, when you stop and pause and you just say that. I know it sounds a bit silly, but yeah, it goes a long way.
Yeah. And if we had done this recording in a couple of weeks, I'm about to head in a couple of weeks to Nicaragua for work, and there's no hot showers for the week and change I'm down there. I get back to the States, and that first hot shower I take with our on-demand water heater that never runs out of hot water, I mean, I've done the Wim Hof method where I take cold showers intentionally, but taking a hot shower after you haven't had, even though it's hot climate, but there's something about a hot shower when you haven't had one in a couple of weeks.
So nice.
Insane. Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say is one superpower that you possess right now, and how did you develop that skill or trait over time?
I would just say connecting people. And that is, I know that I think you're somewhat born with it a little bit, but it's really not that hard to cultivate. It's like if you meet somebody, you go, you know, that person, I've got this other friend and I think they would get along. You know, set up a group situation where maybe they can meet. Don't force them. You can't force people to be anything.
Yeah.
But if there's people that you think can build off of each other, connect them, and don't feel like I think the biggest thing is people are always wondering, like, what am I going to get out of this situation? You might not get anything. Maybe you're going to get karma. Maybe it's part of your dharma if you believe in those things. Maybe these are just like all these little pieces. It's going to come back to you when you need it. So don't ever be like, well, I'm connecting all these people and I'm not getting anything else. That's just your ego talking.
And it's a scarcity mindset as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's abundance in the world if we know how to look at it. And I think that's been a mind shift that I've been working on, is that instead of seeing everything as like, I need this, like I can't share anything with people when I was younger, to now I'm like, how can I share everything and then have it come back? Because the more you kind of give out there, the more that'll come back towards you.
I love it. We talk about doing the thing a lot around here. What's one thing our listeners could do today based on our conversation?
I would say before you go to bed tonight, write down at least one thing good that happened in your day. Even if your day seems like it's terrible. Like yesterday, I broke a coffee pot. I had all these terrible things. Like I just woke up and it was like, I didn't pull the dog food out. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. And it's so easy to get caught in that loop and then just kind of stop and say, like, I am grateful. Like, this good thing happened. Because every day something good happened. Maybe you made the cashier at the grocery store smile, or you listened to the stupid joke they tell every time you go in, but they get such joy out of it that you smiled and went along with it. And that was your day. So it can be little stuff. A stranger, you held the door for a stranger, like just write down something that you're grateful for. And I think that is the easiest thing you can do. And if you want to go math a little bit higher level, make yourself dinner tonight, go to the grocery store, buy the vegetables. If you eat meat, buy the meat, buy like whatever you eat, make it from scratch. Don't put it in the microwave. Don't do that. Chop up the vegetables. And I swear you will feel better about what you put in your mouth. And if you have a family, a spouse, all sit down together at the table and have the meal together.
It's all about coming back to the basics, the simple parts of life. And I couldn't agree with you more. Margaret, it's so nice to chat with you on today's episode. And I want to tell people about, you also have a podcast as well. So the Dirt in Your Skirt podcast, where can they find you online? Where do you hang out the most? What's one place?
Sure. So dirtinyourskirt.com is the website. So that's where you can easily go. Mm-hmm. I am on it's split between Facebook and Instagram are the two places I sort of go most. I mean, Facebook, Dirt in Your Skirt business page shares I share all the articles and everything there. And Instagram, you get to see a little bit more behind the scenes. It's funny because some days will be very businessy type stuff, and then the next day I'll be like, hey, look, my dog did something cute. Here's my dog. So
love it.
Or I'll be like, hey, I made this to eat, and it was really yummy. So here's a picture of what I ate. Or if I'm traveling, obviously I like to take sunsets and stuff like that. So that's a little bit more like personal, I would say. I'm on Twitter. I've got Pinterest. I've got all that stuff. Twitter, I'm somewhat on, but
but Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah. I mean, Instagram's the only one, and Facebook pages are the only two things I have on my phone right now. That was part of my Simplifiers for 2018 was ditching social media off my phone.
Good girl.
Other than what I need to do for work reasons.
Margaret, I'll end on this last question, and thank you again so much for being on today's episode. So if somebody is listening right now and you could whisper in their ear just one thing, and they're thinking about doing an obstacle race, they're thinking about signing up for one, just whisper one thing into their ear right now, what would you say? Just
sign up and do it.
Thank you so much, Margaret, for being on today.
Thank you so much. This has been great.